The massive Zephyrian warship Eternal Order hung in space like a floating city. Its dark metal hull stretched for kilometers, covered in glowing blue symbols that showed the rank and status of every creature aboard. Commander Vextal stood on the bridge, his four eyes scanning the displays that showed an approaching vessel. "Unknown ship detected," announced his subordinate, third-rank Telmar. The younger Zephyrian kept his head bowed low, as was proper when speaking to a superior. "The vessel appears to be from a previously unknown species." Vextal's main eyes focused on the strange ship, while his smaller secondary eyes continued monitoring his crew. The alien vessel looked crude compared to Zephyrian technology. It was smaller, built from gray metal, and had no visible rank markings on its hull. How did these beings know who was in charge? "Send a standard greeting," Vextal ordered. "Request identification and hierarchical structure." The response came quickly. A face appeared on the main screen. Pale skin, strange hair covering the top of its head, and only two eyes. The creature wore a dark uniform with small metal shapes attached to the chest and shoulders. "This is Admiral Janet Chen of the United Earth Navy ship Diplomatic Unity," the being said. "We come in peace, seeking dialogue between our peoples." Vextal felt relief wash through his body. Finally, a species that understood proper order. The creature had identified itself with a rank first. "Admiral, this was how civilized beings should behave. I am Commander Vextal of the Zephyrian Empire," he replied, making sure to state his own rank clearly. "We welcome contact with your people. Your use of rank structure suggests you are a civilized species." Admiral Chen smiled, showing white teeth. "We would be honored to begin formal negotiations. I have my senior staff with me for preliminary discussions." "Excellent," Vextal said. "We shall meet on neutral ground. Prepare your delegation." 2 hours later, Vextal stood in the conference chamber of a small space station that served as neutral territory. His own delegation followed proper protocol. Second Commander Yex Knoll stood exactly 3 steps behind him, while third-rank Telmar remained 4 steps back. Each wore the correct robe showing their position in the hierarchy. The human delegation entered, and Vextal immediately began analyzing their structure. Admiral Chen led the group, wearing the most decorations on her uniform. Behind her came another human with slightly fewer markings. This one introduced himself as Commander Rodriguez. A third human followed with even fewer symbols, identifying herself as Lieutenant Park. Perfect. These humans clearly understood the proper order of things. "Welcome," Vextal said, gesturing with his primary arms while keeping his secondary arms folded in the position that showed respect between equals. "Your species shows wisdom in maintaining clear hierarchy." Admiral Chen nodded. "Order and structure are important to us. We believe in clear chains of command and proper respect for authority." The preliminary talks went smoothly. The humans explained their star systems, their government structure, their military organization. Everything made sense to Vextal. The humans had presidents and generals, admirals and commanders, just like any proper civilization. "Your federation sounds well organized," Second Commander Yex Knoll observed during a break in discussions. "Unlike the scatterfolk we encountered last year." Vextal shuddered at the memory. The scatterfolk had no ranks at all. Every individual seemed to make their own decisions without consulting anyone else. They had been impossible to negotiate with because no one could identify who was actually in charge. "The humans are much more sensible," he agreed. "Notice how their admiral makes all the important decisions and the others wait for her commands." This was exactly what Vextal observed during the sessions. When discussing trade agreements, Admiral Chen would consider the options and make pronouncements. Commander Rodriguez and Lieutenant Park would nod and take notes, but they never contradicted their superior or tried to make decisions above their station. During the third day of talks, the subject turned to technology exchange. The humans were particularly interested in Zephyrian medical advances, while the Zephyrians wanted to learn about human engineering techniques. "Our medical technology could benefit your people greatly," Vextal explained. "However, we must ensure proper protocols are followed. Only authorized medical ranks may access such information." Admiral Chen leaned forward. "We understand completely. In our system, medical decisions go through proper channels as well. We have strict hierarchies in our hospitals and research facilities." "As it should be," Vextal replied with satisfaction. "Chaos in medical matters leads to disaster." The humans agreed to a formal treaty signing ceremony. Both species would exchange cultural liaisons and begin limited technology sharing. Everything proceeded exactly as Zephyrian protocols demanded. On the final day of preliminary negotiations, Admiral Chen made a request that pleased Vextal greatly. "Commander, we would like to invite a Zephyrian delegation to visit Earth," she said. "You could observe our society firsthand and see how we maintain order among our population." "An excellent proposal," Vextal replied. "We accept. When shall this visit occur?" "We have a medical conference beginning next month," Commander Rodriguez interjected, then immediately looked to Admiral Chen for approval to continue speaking. Admiral Chen nodded permission. "Yes, it would be an ideal time to show you our medical hierarchy in action. Some of our finest doctors and researchers will be presenting their work." Vextal was impressed by the careful way the commander had sought permission before expanding on his superior's words. These humans truly understood proper behavior. "We look forward to observing your medical ranks in their natural environment," Vextal said. "It will help us understand your species better." As the human delegation prepared to depart, Vextal felt confident about the future relationship between their species. Unlike so many other races they had encountered, the humans seemed to share Zephyrian values about order, hierarchy, and proper authority. "Sir," third-rank Telmar approached carefully after the humans had left, "do you believe these humans will prove reliable allies?" "Indeed," Vextal replied. "They understand that civilization requires structure. Their military ranks are clearly defined. Their leaders make decisions while subordinates follow orders, and they respect proper protocol in all things." He looked out at the human ship as it departed. The diplomatic unity moved in formation with 2 escort vessels, maintaining perfect spacing and coordination. Everything about the humans suggested a people who valued order above chaos. "Prepare a report for High Command," Vextal ordered. "Recommend full diplomatic relations with the Human Federation. They are a species we can work with." Second Commander Yexnol bowed properly. "It shall be done, Commander." "Shall I emphasize their military structure in the report?" "Yes, make sure High Command understands that these humans follow proper hierarchical protocols. Unlike the individualistic species we have encountered before, the humans can be counted on to honor agreements because their leaders actually control their subordinates." As Vextal returned to his ship, he felt satisfied with the successful first contact. The humans had proven themselves to be a civilized species that understood the importance of rank, order, and proper authority. Their upcoming visit to Earth would surely confirm everything he had observed about their well-structured society. He had no idea that his understanding of human nature was about to be completely shattered. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within 6 hours of the vote, every major news network was broadcasting the same story. Humanity had walked out of the Galactic Council. The species that had helped build the modern galaxy was leaving. At first, most people did not think it was a big deal. Humans were just one species out of 47. They controlled maybe 5% of Council space. How much difference could it make? The answer came quickly. Captain Jorik of the Kalari merchant vessel Star Prophet was 3 days out from Nexus Prime when his navigation system started giving error messages. The quantum pathway calculator that helped ships jump between star systems was showing red warnings everywhere. "What is wrong with this thing?" Jorik growled at his navigator, a young Kalari named Pex. Pex's striped fur was standing up with worry. "Captain, the pathway computer says it cannot calculate safe jumps. The correction algorithms are missing." "Missing? How can they be missing?" "The technical support network is offline, sir. All the human engineers have stopped responding to our calls." Jorik felt his stomach drop. The Star Prophet, like most merchant ships, used navigation systems that were partly made by humans. They had never thought about it much. The technology just worked. Now it was not working. The same thing was happening all across the galaxy. Human cargo ships that carried goods between different species simply vanished from the shipping lanes. No explosions. No distress calls. They just stopped showing up at their destinations. On Nexus Prime Station, Chief Engineer Kulak was staring at a wall of red warning lights. Kulak was a hegemony warrior who had been assigned to keep the station running. He was good at fighting, but not so good at technology. "Where are engineers Peterson and Rodriguez?" he demanded. His assistant, a nervous creature that looked like a walking mushroom, trembled as he spoke. "They left on the first transport after the human delegation departed, sir." They said their contracts were terminated? Terminated? Who terminated them? Apparently they terminated themselves, sir. All human technical staff across the station have left. Kulak looked at the wall of warning lights. Half of them were for the gravity generators that kept the station comfortable for different species. The other half were for life support systems, power distribution, and communication arrays. All of these systems needed constant maintenance. Most of that maintenance had been done by humans. How long before things start breaking? Kulak asked. The mushroom creature checked his tablet with shaking fingers. The gravity generators need daily calibration, sir. Without adjustment, they will start failing within a week. The atmospheric processors need weekly maintenance. The quantum communication array needs monthly updates to its translation protocols. And we do not know how to do any of this? The human engineers never taught anyone else, sir. They said their methods were trade secrets. Dr. Sarah Kim had been the lead researcher at the Advanced Physics Institute on Altair Prime. She was also human. When the news of the council vote reached her, she calmly saved all her research files to an encrypted drive and deleted everything from the Institute's computers. Dr. Kim, what are you doing? Asked her research partner, Dr. Vexhai. Dr. Vexhai was an Altarian, one of the few species that had voted to support humanity. I am following orders from Earth Command, Sarah said quietly. All human research is to be secured and prepared for evacuation. But our project, we are so close to a breakthrough in faster-than-light communication. Sarah looked sadly at her friend. I know, but this research was funded by Earth. The base theories were developed by human scientists. The experimental methods are human innovations. Earth is taking its technology home. Surely you can leave copies. For the sake of science? Sarah shook her head. The council voted to restrict human technology sharing. This is what restriction looks like. Dr. Vexhai watched helplessly as Sarah packed her personal items. The Advanced Physics Institute would lose 60% of its research capability overnight. Projects that had taken years to develop would die without human expertise. The same scene was playing out across the galaxy. Human doctors were leaving medical facilities, taking with them knowledge of treatments that had saved millions of lives. Human engineers were departing from construction projects, leaving half-built structures that nobody else knew how to complete. Human researchers were closing laboratories that had been working on solutions to galactic problems. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the UEC Defiance, watching the evacuation report scroll across his screen. Every few minutes, another human ship checked in. They were leaving alien space and heading for the rendezvous points. Admiral, we are receiving urgent communications from 17 different species, his communications officer reported. They want to know when our ships will resume cargo runs. Tell them to check with the Galactic Council, Chen replied. We no longer take orders from anyone but Earth Command. Sir, the Kalari Trade Federation is offering double pay for our transport services. Tell them no. The Zephyrian colonies are requesting emergency food shipments. They say their people will starve without our cargo runs. Chen's face was stone. Tell them to ask the Council for help. They voted us out. They can solve their own problems. What the galaxy was discovering was something they had never realized. Humans had not just participated in galactic civilization. They had quietly become essential to it. Human engineers maintained critical systems on hundreds of space stations. Human doctors provided medical care that no other species could replicate. Human traders connected remote regions that other species found unprofitable to serve. Most importantly, human technology had become woven into the fabric of everyday life across the galaxy. The quantum computers that managed interstellar banking? They used human-designed processors. The atmospheric control systems that kept alien colonies livable? They needed human-created software. The communication networks that let different species talk to each other? They relied on human translation algorithms that learned and adapted constantly. None of this had been planned as a weapon. Humans had simply been helpful. When they saw problems, they solved them. When other species needed assistance, humans provided it. Over 2 centuries, their solutions had become so common that everyone forgot where they came from. Now those solutions were disappearing. Station manager Thok Von of Deep Space Trading Post 7 watched his screens with growing horror. Trading Post 7 was located in the middle of nowhere, but it served as a vital refueling stop for ships traveling between the core worlds and the outer colonies. The post's fusion reactors were showing critical errors. The fuel processing systems were offline. The docking bay controls were not responding properly. All of these systems had been upgraded with human technology over the years. How long before we lose life support? Thakvan asked his chief engineer. Maybe 2 weeks, sir. 3 if we are lucky. And there are no human engineers available? They all left yesterday, sir. They said their safety could not be guaranteed in council space anymore. Thakvan realized that Trading Post 7, along with hundreds of similar facilities, would have to be evacuated within days. The economic impact would be enormous. Ships would have to take much longer routes to reach their destinations. Some remote colonies might become completely cut off. The galaxy was beginning to understand that the humans had not just been neighbors. They had been the mechanics, the doctors, the teachers, and the innovators that kept everything running. Without them, the complex machinery of galactic civilization was starting to break down. And this was only the beginning. 3 weeks after the humans left the council, the galaxy was falling apart. Merchant Prime Ural sat in his office watching the Kalari Trade Federation's financial reports. The numbers made no sense. Profit margins that had been steady for decades were collapsing. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for generations were shutting down. The entire galactic economy was having a breakdown. How bad is it? Asked his assistant, Submerchant Crix. Ural's whiskers twitched with stress. Worse than anything in our history. The quantum banking network has failed completely. We cannot transfer credits between star systems. Half our merchant fleet is stranded because their navigation systems do not work without human technical support. Surely we can fix these problems ourselves. That is what I thought too. Ural pulled up a technical report on his screen. Do you know what this is? This is a breakdown of how the quantum banking system works. Our best engineers have been studying it for 3 weeks. They estimate it will take them 15 years to understand it well enough to rebuild it. Crick stared at the report. 15 years? The humans did not just build our banking system. They created entirely new types of mathematics to make it work. Mathematics that nobody else understands. Without those humans, we are back to carrying physical currency between planets. The banking crisis was only part of the problem. Across Kalari space, factories were shutting down because they could not get replacement parts for their machinery. The parts were manufactured by automated systems that used human-designed programming. Without human technicians to maintain the programs, the factories could not produce anything. On Zephyr 7, Colony Administrator Vexith was facing an even worse crisis. The atmospheric processors that kept the colony's air breathable were failing. Red warning lights flashed constantly in the control room. How long do we have? Vexith asked Chief Technician Ralok. Ralok checked his instruments with trembling claws. Maybe 6 weeks before the atmosphere becomes toxic. The processors are designed to remove dangerous gases from our air and replace them with oxygen. But the control systems keep giving error messages. What kind of error messages? They say the calibration parameters are missing. Apparently, the systems need constant adjustment based on changing atmospheric conditions. The humans who designed them built in automatic correction systems, but those systems are controlled by computers we cannot access. Vexith felt panic rising in his chest. Cannot access? The computers use quantum encryption that only responds to human genetic markers. The designers built them that way to prevent tampering. Now we cannot even shut the systems down safely. Colony Administrator Vexith realized that Zephyr 7th would have to be evacuated within a month. 50,000 Zephyrians would lose their homes. Worse, there were dozens of other colonies facing the same problem. The Zephyrians had been among the loudest voices calling for restrictions on humanity. They had complained that humans were expanding too aggressively into their territory. Now they were discovering that humans had been the only reason their expanded territory was livable. The crystal beings called the Vorthak were facing their own crisis. The Vorthak lived on worlds with dangerous radiation levels that would kill most other species. They survived by using sophisticated energy shields around their cities and sacred sites. Prime Crystal Zethmore hummed with distress as she examined the failing shield generators. The harmonic frequencies are shifting, she sang to her technicians. The shields are losing stability. What does this mean, Prime Crystal? It means our cities will be exposed to deadly radiation within days. The humans designed these shields to automatically adjust their frequencies to match changing radiation patterns. Without that adjustment, the shields will fail completely. The Vorthak had spent centuries perfecting their crystal technology. They considered themselves the most advanced species in the galaxy when it came to energy manipulation. But their shields used human-invented techniques that combined crystal resonance with quantum field manipulation. Without humans to maintain the delicate balance, even the Vorthak's most sacred sites would become uninhabitable. The communication crisis was spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Species that had been talking to each other for centuries suddenly could not understand each other anymore. The Universal Translation Network had seemed like such a simple thing. Every species could talk to every other species instantly. Trade negotiations, diplomatic meetings, scientific conferences, all of it was possible because the translation network converted any language into any other language in real time. What people had not realized was that language changes constantly. New words appear. Old words change meaning. Slang develops. Technical terms evolve. The translation network had to learn and adapt every day to keep up with these changes. That learning was guided by human linguists who understood how languages develop and change. Without those linguists, the translation network was stuck with old data. It could still translate basic concepts, but complex ideas became garbled. Technical discussions became impossible. Diplomatic negotiations turned into frustrated arguments as species struggled to understand each other. Ambassador Klentar of the Hegemony was trying to coordinate a response to the crisis, but his meeting with other species representatives was falling apart. "The quantum stabilizers need immediate recalibration," said the Altarian delegate. At least that was what the translation system thought he said. What came through to Klentar was, "The bright wiggly things need quick color changing." "I do not understand," Klentar replied. His words were translated to the Altarian as, "My brain has stopped working." The Altarian delegate looked confused and tried again. "Critical infrastructure requires technical maintenance." The translation system turned this into, "Important buildings want machine hugs." After 2 hours of this, Klentar gave up. The species that had voted to restrict humanity could not even talk to each other clearly enough to coordinate a response to the crisis they had created. On Nexus Prime, the heart of galactic government, things were even worse. The massive space station was slowly dying. Life support systems designed to keep dozens of different species comfortable were failing one by one. The station's atmosphere was divided into hundreds of different zones. Some areas had high oxygen for species that needed it. Other areas had methane-based atmospheres for creatures that breathed different gases. Still other areas were filled with water for aquatic species. All of these different environments were maintained by an incredibly complex system of atmospheric processors, gravity generators, and environmental controls. The system had been upgraded and improved by human engineers for over a century. It was so complicated that no single person understood how all the pieces worked together. Chief Engineer Kulak was getting reports of system failures from every section of the station. In Zone 47, the gravity was too weak for the hegemony delegates to walk properly. In Zone 73, the atmosphere was becoming toxic to the crystalline Vorthak. In Zone 156, the water temperature was rising too high for the aquatic depth swimmers. "How many beings live on this station?" Kulak asked his assistant. "Nearly 2 million, sir. Representatives from 46 species plus their families and support staff." "How long before we have to evacuate?" The assistant checked his tablet. "Some zones are already becoming unlivable, sir. We have maybe 2 weeks before the whole station becomes too dangerous for most species." Kulak realized that the capital of galactic civilization might have to be abandoned. The Galactic Council itself might have to shut down because they could not maintain their headquarters. The crisis was not limited to technology and infrastructure. The galaxy's food supply was collapsing too. Many worlds had become dependent on crops that were grown using human agricultural techniques. These techniques used specially designed fertilizers, pest control systems, and growing environments that produced much more food than traditional methods. But the agricultural systems needed constant monitoring and adjustment. Human agricultural specialists had been providing that expertise for decades. Without them, crop yields were dropping drastically. Some worlds that had been able to feed themselves were now facing starvation. Emergency meetings were being called on every major world. The species that had voted to restrict humanity were discovering that they had accidentally voted to destroy their own civilization. The technology, expertise, and infrastructure that humans provided had become so essential that the galaxy could not function without it. But perhaps the most terrifying discovery was still to come. As communication networks failed and transportation systems broke down, reports were starting to come in from the edges of galactic space. Strange signals, ships disappearing, colonies going silent. The humans had been very quiet about what they did in the dark spaces between the stars. The galaxy was about to learn why. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Half the species could not understand each other because the translation systems were failing. The other half were too busy dealing with crises on their home worlds to pay attention. Speaker Thelm's metal branches creaked as he tried to maintain order. "We must find the humans," he announced. "The galaxy needs their expertise to prevent total collapse." Ambassador Clentar of the Hegemony stood up. The Hegemony were warriors, and they believed in solving problems with force. "I volunteer to lead a fleet to human space. We will bring them back and make them fix what they broke." "The humans did not break anything," protested the Altarian delegate. "We voted to restrict them. They simply left." "It does not matter who is at fault," Clentar growled. "What matters is fixing the crisis. The humans have knowledge we need. If they will not share it willingly, we will take it." Within 2 days, Clentar had assembled a fleet of 30 warships from 6 different species. It was the largest military force the Council had put together in 50 years. They called it Operation Reconnect, but everyone knew it was really an invasion force. The fleet headed for the Sol system, the original home of humanity. Intelligence reports said that Earth was the center of human government. If they could capture Earth, they could force the humans to cooperate. Admiral Thektar commanded the fleet from his flagship, the Hegemony battlecruiser, Bone Crusher. He was a veteran of many wars and had never lost a battle. He expected the humans to surrender as soon as they saw his fleet. "How long until we reach Sol system?" he asked his navigator. 6 hours, Admiral. Our scouts report no unusual activity. The system appears to be defended normally." Thektar nodded. "Prepare all weapons. Target their orbital installations first. Once we control their space infrastructure, they will have to negotiate." But when the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, they found something impossible. The system was empty. "Navigator, check your coordinates," Thektar ordered. "Coordinates are correct, sir. This is definitely the Sol system, but what? Sir, there are no human ships, no space stations, no orbital cities, no communication signals. It is like nobody lives here anymore." Thektar stared at the main screen. The planets were still there. Earth looked normal from a distance, but there were no artificial structures in space. No satellites, no defense platforms, no traffic control signals. "Take us closer to Earth," he ordered. As the fleet approached the third planet, the situation became even more confusing. Earth's continents looked normal. The oceans were still blue. The atmosphere was still breathable, but there were no lights on the night side of the planet. No radio signals, no responses to their communication attempts. "Launch scouts to investigate the surface," Thektar commanded. The scout ships returned 6 hours later with disturbing news. Earth's cities were empty but undamaged. Buildings stood intact, but there were no people inside them. Vehicles sat in parking areas with no one to drive them. It was as if billions of humans had simply vanished. "What about the other planets?" Thektar asked. The scouts had checked Mars, the Moon, and the orbital habitats around Jupiter. All empty, all abandoned, but not destroyed. It was like the humans had packed up their entire civilization and moved somewhere else. "Admiral," called his science officer, "we are detecting unusual activity in the asteroid belt." "What kind of activity?" "Mining operations, sir, but not like anything we have seen before. Entire asteroids have been hollowed out with incredible precision. The mining technology appears to be far more advanced than anything in our databases." Thektar ordered the fleet to investigate. What they found in the asteroid belt was even more disturbing than the empty planets. Massive mining machines worked continuously, stripping resources from asteroids and processing them into refined materials. But the machines were completely automated. There were no crews, no control ships, no overseers. "How long have these operations been running?" Thektar asked. His science officer ran calculations. "Based on the amount of material processed, at least 2 years, sir. Possibly longer. 2 years? But the humans only left the Council 3 weeks ago." "Yes, sir. They were secretly mining the asteroid belt long before they left the Council. And, sir, the amount of material they have processed is enormous. Enough to build thousands of ships. Thektar felt a chill run down his spine. The humans had been preparing for this day for years. While they sat at the council table talking about peace and cooperation, they had been secretly building something in their home system. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "we are receiving a message. From the humans? Unknown, sir. The signal is coming from somewhere in the outer system, but we cannot determine the exact location. Put it on screen." A hologram appeared showing a human woman in military uniform. She looked to be in her 30s with short brown hair and calm eyes. Behind her, Thektar could see what looked like a ship's bridge, but the technology was unlike anything he had ever seen. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," the woman said. "You are trespassing in human space. You have 10 minutes to leave the Sol system." Thektar laughed. "Admiral Chen, I have 30 warships. You appear to have none. I suggest you surrender and agree to negotiations." Admiral Chen's expression did not change. "You have 30 warships from the old galaxy. We have moved beyond such primitive technology. This is your only warning." "Show me these advanced ships of yours," Thektar challenged. The hologram disappeared. For a moment, Thektar thought the humans were bluffing. Then his tactical officer shouted a warning. "Admiral, multiple contacts appearing throughout the system." The main screen lit up with dozens of red dots. Human ships were decloaking everywhere, not just around the fleet, but scattered throughout the entire solar system. Ships hiding behind planets and asteroid fields, even inside the corona of the sun itself. "How many?" Thektar demanded. "Over 200 contacts, sir, and they are big. Much bigger than our ships." Thektar stared at the tactical display. Each red dot represented a human vessel larger than his flagship. But that was impossible. Intelligence reports said the humans had maybe 50 warships total. Where had these ships come from? "Sir," his science officer said quietly, "I am analyzing the energy signatures from the human ships. The power output is significant." "How significant?" "Each ship appears to generate more power than our entire fleet combined, sir." Admiral Chen's face appeared on screen again. "You have 5 minutes remaining." "Wait," Thektar said quickly. "We can negotiate." "The galaxy needs human help. Billions of beings are suffering because of infrastructure failures." "The galaxy voted us out," Admiral Chen replied. "You made your choice. We made ours, but surely you care about innocent lives. We cared for 200 years. We maintained galactic infrastructure. We provided medical aid. We fought in your wars. We kept the peace. And in return, you voted to restrict us because you feared our success." Admiral Chen leaned forward. "You want to know where we have been for the past 2 years? We have been preparing for this day, building new ships with new technology, training new crews for new missions, getting ready for a galaxy that did not want us." "What new missions?" Thektar asked. "That is not your concern anymore. You have 2 minutes to leave our space." Thektar realized he had no choice. His 30 ships were outnumbered 7-1 by vessels that were individually more powerful than anything he had ever seen. The humans had not just left the galaxy, they had transcended it. "All ships, withdraw from the system immediately," he ordered. As the council fleet retreated, Thektar could not stop thinking about Admiral Chen's words. New missions, new technology. What had the humans been preparing for? The answer came 3 days later when the first reports started arriving from the rim of the galaxy. Entire star systems were going dark. Ships were disappearing without sending distress signals. Colonies were finding themselves facing threats that made no sense. Something was hunting in the darkness between the stars. Something that the humans had apparently been fighting for years without telling anyone. The galaxy had kicked out their protectors, and now they were about to learn what they had really been protected from. The message appeared everywhere at once. Every working screen in the galaxy suddenly displayed the same image. A woman in military uniform standing on the bridge of a ship. Behind her, stars moved in patterns that hurt to look at. The technology around her seemed to bend space itself. Ambassador Klentar was in his quarters on Nexus Prime when his personal communication device activated by itself. The emergency council session he had been planning was forgotten as he stared at the impossible transmission. "This is Fleet Admiral Maria Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force," the woman said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes held the weight of terrible knowledge. "This message is being broadcast on every communication network in the galaxy using our own technology. Across the galaxy, beings stopped what they were doing to watch. In the failing cities of Zephyr 7, in the crystal caves of the Vorthak worlds, in the trading posts that were slowly losing life support, everyone saw the same face speaking the same words. 6 months ago, you voted humanity out of the Galactic Council, Admiral Vasquez continued. You said we were too aggressive, too dangerous, too unpredictable. You wanted us gone. Congratulations, you got your wish. The camera pulled back to show more of the ship's bridge. The vessel was enormous. Crew members moved between control stations that used technology no other species had ever seen. Through the windows, other ships were visible. Hundreds of them, each one the size of a small moon. For 200 years, humanity participated in galactic civilization, Admiral Vasquez said. We shared our technology. We helped build your infrastructure. We provided medical care and disaster relief. We fought beside you in wars against pirates and raiders. She paused and her expression grew darker. What we never told you was what else we were doing. While you saw us as merchants and diplomats and scientists, we were also serving as guardians. For 2 centuries, we fought battles you never knew about. We held defensive lines in places you never heard of. We died protecting you from threats you could not imagine. The transmission shifted to show tactical displays covered with strange symbols and readings, star charts marked with red zones, fleet positions around objects that registered as impossible geometries on the sensors. The galaxy is not as safe as you believed, Admiral Vasquez explained. Between the stars, in the deep voids where no one travels, things exist that view organic life as either food or an obstacle to be removed. We called them the Devourers, the Silence, the Architects of Emptiness. Scientists who studied them usually went insane. On Nexus Prime, Speaker Theln's metal branches were trembling as he processed what he was hearing. Ancient memories stirred in his databanks. Legends from before the Council was formed. Stories of civilizations that had vanished completely, leaving behind only dead worlds and strange radiation signatures. These entities do not think like you, Admiral Vasquez continued. They do not want territory or resources or power. They want to unmake existence itself, to return the universe to the cold emptiness that existed before stars were born. Every few thousand years, they emerge from the deep void to consume entire sectors of space. The display showed historical records. Images of dead worlds with their surfaces stripped clean, space where stars should have been but only darkness remained, sensor readings that showed impossible readings of negative energy. 50 years ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected signs that another emergence was beginning. The entities were stirring in the void, moving toward inhabited space. We estimated they would reach the galaxy's rim within decades. Admiral Vasquez gestured to the tactical displays behind her. We prepared. We built new ships using principles of physics that most species cannot comprehend. We trained crews for missions into regions of space where normal matter breaks down. We established defensive positions in the void between galaxies. We did this in secret because we knew you would panic. We knew you would interfere. We knew you would demand to know every detail of our preparations. And that knowledge would have driven your populations insane. Some truths are too dangerous to share. The transmission showed images of human ships unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Vessels that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Weapons that fired concentrated emptiness itself. Shields that protected against attacks on the fundamental structure of reality. For the past 2 years, while you debated restrictions on our expansion, we were fighting the first scout forces of the Devourers. Small incursions at the galaxy's edge, probing attacks to test our defenses. We held the line. We kept them contained. Admiral Vasquez stepped closer to the camera. But 3 weeks ago, you voted us out of galactic civilization. You made it clear that you did not want our help. You did not want our protection. You wanted us gone. The tactical displays changed to show new positions. Human defensive lines were pulling back toward the center of the galaxy. Monitoring stations were being abandoned. Defensive installations were powering down. So we are leaving. All human defensive positions are being evacuated. All monitoring stations are going offline. All containment fields around void incursions are being deactivated. Speaker Theln felt something he had never experienced in his 1,000-year existence. Pure terror. You wanted to handle galactic affairs without human interference, Admiral Vasquez said. Now you can handle the Devourers without human protection. Good luck. The transmission ended abruptly. Across the galaxy, screens went dark and communication networks began failing completely as human-maintained systems shut down for the final time. The first attacks came 6 hours later, The mining colony on Outer Terminus was a small operation on the edge of known space. 2,000 beings from different species worked there extracting rare minerals. It was a peaceful place that had never experienced violence. Colony manager Vexron was reviewing production reports when all the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, but something was wrong. The stars visible through the control room windows had changed. Constellations that had been there for millions of years were simply gone. Manager Vexron, his communications officer, called out, "We are receiving a distress signal from the orbital station. Put it through." The voice that came over the radio was filled with panic. "Control, this is Station 7. Something is wrong with space itself. Our instruments are showing impossible readings. The stars are going out one by one. It is like something is eating the light." Through the windows, Vexron watched more stars disappear, not exploding, not dimming, simply ceasing to exist. Where they had been, perfect blackness remained, a darkness so complete that it hurt to look at. "All personnel, report to evacuation stations immediately," Vexron announced over the colony's communication system. But it was too late. The darkness was spreading faster than their ships could move. As it touched the edge of the solar system, the colony's sensors went insane. They registered temperatures below absolute zero, gravity that pointed in impossible directions, matter that existed in negative quantities. The last transmission from Outer Terminus was Vexron's voice screaming that the darkness was alive, that it was hungry, that it was coming for everything. Similar reports began flooding in from across the galaxy's rim. Entire star systems were vanishing, not destroyed, not conquered, simply ceasing to exist as if they had never been there at all. On Nexus Prime, the emergency council session was in chaos. Species that had spent weeks arguing about trade restrictions were now facing the complete annihilation of their civilization. "We must contact the humans," Speaker Thelon announced. "We must ask them to resume their defensive positions." Ambassador Clintar shook his head. "We tried. All human communication channels are closed. They are not responding to our signals. Then we must find them, send fleets to human space, offer them anything they want. Our fleets cannot function without human-maintained navigation systems. Most of our ships are stranded in port." The bitter irony was complete. The galaxy had voted to restrict humanity because they feared human power. Now that same human power was the only thing that could save them, and it was gone. Reports continued to arrive from the outer territories. The Zephyrian frontier worlds had gone silent. 3 Kalari trading posts had simply vanished from all sensors. Even the mighty hegemony was losing entire battle fleets to attacks by things that should not exist. The entities the humans called devourers were not conquering the galaxy. They were unmaking it. Wherever they passed, space itself became wounded. Stars collapsed into impossible configurations. Planets turned inside out. Time moved backward in random patches. It was during the height of the panic that one final human transmission arrived. This time it came from Ambassador Elena Vasquez, the woman who had walked out of the council chambers weeks earlier. "This is a message for the Galactic Council," she said. Her image appeared on the few working screens that remained. Behind her was a ship's bridge that seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. "You are facing the Devourers now. We fought them for 2 centuries while maintaining the illusion that we were just another peaceful species. We died in battles against nightmares that would drive your populations insane just to look at them." She gestured to something off-screen. "The entities you are fighting are older than your oldest civilizations.